everyone. What a crowd. Who knew? Who knew? I know, I think you should collect money. I think. Thank you all so much for coming down. I really appreciate it. I seem to be inspired by some of the folks that come here and getting to really know people and know their stories. And it's just been amazing. So as I go on, I'm trying to learn some more stories. Well, let's talk about John and Mary, who have just an inspirational story of a diagnosis and how food really changed the trajectory of everything. So I like to call this like a little TED Talk, okay? So right here, right from the horse's mouth, how you can change through food, diet, exercise, whatever, you can actually make a difference in your life and just change everything. So I am super excited to have John and Mary Helfrich here to do a presentation on food and movement, and let that be your medicine. So turning it over to you guys. Look at how popular you are.
Yeah, wow. It's surprising. You like Mary, you know. Surprising that the number of people we're going to come to this. So thanks for doing it. The actual title of this, they have food and movement be thy medicine. I'm going to add one more component to it. It's community, and this is community. What goes on here at the center, and the things that Michelle and her team put on for everybody has been extremely helpful to me. So a little bit about my background, because it actually sets all of this up. I was trained as an analytical chemist and a scientist from way back when. I spent 10 years in the research laboratory in the Philadelphia area. Got associated with some high-tech companies up here in the Boston area, and now I'm here. So I mention that because I like to geek out on some of the subjects that I'm going to talk about today. And I am constantly researching kind of what goes on with respect to diet, movement, community, and what I call health span. So let me just define health span. If I do that, kind of look at it this way. We look at it this way and say this is age. So as we age, which is continuous, right? I mean, you're just going to keep going until hopefully 100 plus, right? Right? And over here is health, right? So your health kind of goes along as you're aging. It kind of goes down a little bit, and then all of a sudden, at some point, things start just dropping off very, very quickly as we age. So, from my perspective, what I started researching when I was 55 years old, when I turned 55, I said, okay, half my time on this planet is probably over. So I need to start studying what happens as we move forward, as I age from 55 to 65 to 75, which I almost am now. I'll be 73 next month. And so what happens in that phase, and what research has been going on to try to optimize your health in that phase. Not just living, not just being alive, but the actual health. So it's this zone right in here that I started spending a lot of time and a lot of effort learning what I should know to improve my particular health span. So my study research went into here, and what I learned in a nutshell, I'm going to summarize a lot of my thinking. I could go a deep dive into any one of these subjects. I could take the onion and peel it a lot deeper, so I'm going to stay right on the surface of what I learned. So in this particular area, I learned a new term. It's brand new. It's only about 15 years old, maybe 10 years old, and it's really come into play in the last 5 years or so. And you might not have heard it before. Maybe you have. If you have, raise your hand. It's called epigenetics, and that's the study of this stuff. Okay? Has anybody heard of epigenetics? Okay. So when I had my event, and I'll tell you what my event was, I had bypass surgery at the end of June of last year, okay? So, and it was a complete shock to me that I could ever have bypass surgery, or I would ever need bypass surgery. And so that was like a big aha to me. But the issue was I was perfectly healthy right up to the last, I'd say, 5 to 7 years before I had the bypass surgery. And the only symptom I had, and it was the only one, so there's a lesson here. The only symptom I had was that it was shortness of breath on climbing uphill or biking uphill when I was with the bike wheel. And so that was my only symptom. And every doctor I've talked to since then, my surgeon, who was a great surgeon out of UMass Memorial, all the cardio people, the catheterization docs that I talked to, they all said, "You mean you never had chest pain?" And I never did. I never had chest pain at all. And the reason why that is part of this discussion that we're going to have here today. I was in almost perfect health before they found this. So I had the shortness of breath. But thanks to Mary, she said, "You ought to have this looked at." And I said, no, for 5 years. No, I'm fine, everything's cool, I don't have to do anything. Finally, she said, "You really should have this looked at." So I said, okay, I'm going to go to the doc, and I'm going to say, I have shortness of breath, and I like the diagnostics. I like to find out why that is. So they booked me right away for an EKG. So I had an EKG, and went through, the cardiologist comes in, looks at it, says, "Looks like you have an issue. Don't know where, don't know exactly what, but looks like on the EKG you have an issue." So I said, "Well, what do I need to do?" And he said, "Okay, go get a stress test." Okay, so I go up to UMass Memorial, and I get on the treadmill. They hook me up, and they're doing all kinds of studies of my heart. And right in the middle of my stress test, and I'm saying maybe 70% into the stress test, they shut me down. They stop it right now. The one nurse runs out of, I was fine. I was there running around, I'm having a good time, I'm not out of breath. I'm going, why do I have to stop this? Just stop. She runs out, goes gets a cardiologist, they come back in and they said, "You have a blockage. And we don't know exactly where, but you have a blockage." And I didn't think that could be true, but okay, you see it, you've done this before, obviously. So let's have it, take a look at it. So they had scheduled me for a catheterization. I hated that, but nevertheless, they did that. I hate going to hospitals, I hate going to doctors, I hate taking medication, I hate all of that. But I went for the catheterization. So I took that catheterization, and the idea there was if they could see where there was a blockage somewhere that they could fix with a stent, they would do it. Okay, at that particular point in time, we'll go in, take a look, fix it. And that's what I expected to have happen. I thought maybe there's one little thing that's got to get tweaked, and I'm fine. So I lay there on the table, they inject me, they do all the stuff that they're supposed to do, and the doc comes right to the table. I was awake through the whole thing. So the doc comes in and says, "No, you have severe blockages in a few of your arteries in your heart. And your heart really is working on about 1/3 of its capacity," which blew me away. Because I was a marathon runner, triathlete. I was in great shape beforehand. I skied every year before that. I hiked all the time. Never had a heart problem other than shortness of breath. That was my only symptom. And all the docs that I had talked to, and all the nurses, most of the nurses, "You mean tell me you've never had chest pain?" I go, "Never." And so after the surgery, I took a course on a cardiac rehab program. And everybody in my class, in my cardiac rehab program, all of them either had massive heart attack, huge number of stents put in, and had problems. And all of them had chest pain. Every single one of them did. We have a good friendship there now. So all my friends, I never had any chest pain, just shortness of breath. So they went in, they took a look, and they said, "No, it's beyond the help of a stent. You got to get bypass surgery." So I looked at that, we went to see the surgeon. She was great, a wonderful surgeon, up at UMass Memorial. We had a long session with her. I made her take me through. I said, if you're gonna do this, walk me through the whole procedure. You're gonna cut me open, what are you gonna do? So walk me through the whole procedure. And I said, well, how could this happen? She said, you know, genetics does play a factor in your long-term health. And I kind of believe that to some extent earlier than this, but it kind of came home to roost. And so it forced me to take a look at my history, my family history. My uncles, my grandfather all had heart problems. But I never really paid much attention to it. I was a little kid, so what would I do? So anyway, when I dug into it, there was some history there. And so from my perspective, and from the discussion with the surgeon, she said, look, if we look at this epigenetics issue, here's your genes, okay? You get that through heredity, right? So we've all been on the earth. Human beings have only been on the earth for what, 3 million years? Million years or so? It's not a lot of time. So our genes are very much like all the genes from way back when. So what we found is that there's inputs to those genes. It's epigenetics. It's the environment that you put those genes in. So it's the food you eat. It's the water you drink. It's all of those inputs that come into what affects your genetic output, because these inputs come into the genes, and then the genes express something, and I call it, for lack of getting too technical, just an output. It keeps you alive. It makes your cells do what they're supposed to do. It makes your legs grow. It makes your bones grow. It makes all your cells grow. There's also inputs. These are good. Okay, these are good inputs. There's also bad inputs. Okay, so these can be bad. These are some of the things we're going to talk about today. Some of the things I'm going to do a little multimedia here with one of my heroes. As I said, I was researching this really from 15 years ago to present. So I've had a chance to interact with, understand, meet, talk with, including Michael Greger, who's actually the hero. Michael Greger sponsors a YouTube site called nutritionfacts.org, and it's going to be in your handout. If you want to research any of these things, or if you have a particular ailment like diabetes or cancer or heart disease or any other kidney disease, he has the collated information on all of the research studies that have been done on diet, what you eat, and the effect of outcomes on these particular diseases. So that's what this bad piece of it is. What is it that we're looking at as a species? So, I just sit back and I look around how I grew up in the late 50s, mid to late 60s. And just look at the people who were around you during those particular times. They don't look like anything that does between 2000 and 2024, right? You see this massive amount of obesity, massive amount of diabetes, massive amount of cancer and heart disease. It's huge, and it's getting exponential. So what's causing that is the issue. And a lot of people, a lot of the medical industry doesn't want to talk specifically about it, but I researched it, and I always challenge my docs all the time. We actually have an interesting conversation. I don't know that they like me or dislike me, but I challenge them all the time. Whenever they say, well, you should take statin. I say, well, why? And we have that discussion. I say, well, tell me what the numbers are. And they go, what do you mean? I said, 1,000 people get statins, 1,000 people don't get statins. Both of those groups have problems with their cholesterol. How many die in each group? Yeah, we don't know. And it's very small, but nevertheless, I know the numbers. So I wanted to have that discussion with the docs. So I have that discussion because my theory is that there's so much here in this epigenetics because you're inputting the genes to output things that are not good for you and unhealthy for you long term. They don't kill you right away. You know, if you're eating, chips and oils and what else, Mary?
A lot of salt.
Salt, lot of salt,
Salt people.
all the salty, all the meats and hot dogs and burgers that are really sugary stuff, yeah, really bad for you. You're going to get these kind of outputs, and that's what's happened over the last couple of decades. And you can see it. You just walk the streets. I can't believe what I see all the time. So that's the epigenetics thing. And after 15 years of study, I come to these conclusions that there are a few things that are going to define your health span, how good you're going to live long term. And the point I want to make, because there's people here that are my age, there's people here that are younger than me, is that you can change at any time. There's a positive benefit, whether you're 60, 70, 80, or 90. There is a positive benefit that your health will see. And you'll see it in this early video of Michael Greger. The reason he became a physician is because his grandmother was diagnosed with deadly heart disease. Okay? She was told to go home and get your affairs in order at 65 years old. You'll see it, because she's going to talk to her briefly. She lived to 95 because she changed her diet, and she was up, walking around, outside, out off of her wheelchair, literally in weeks. Not months, not years, in weeks. So there's huge benefit to this. And the point of this is you can make a change, even if it's a small change. We made a pretty big change a long time ago. And it helped me because I didn't have a catastrophic event. I did not have a heart attack. Right? I did not have something that just put me right down. I had shortness of breath. And I had it looked into, which I think there's a story there that maybe it's a good idea to look at stuff when there's more time for that. But it's just important to be aware of that, and that you can make these changes and make that. The fact that I didn't have heart attacks because I was so healthy. Physiologically, I was very healthy. After the surgery, I went home in 5 days. So I was in there, had open heart surgery. 5 days later, I was home. A month later, I was outside my house, walking around, picking up sticks, all kinds of stuff. And now I'm back to what I was a year before the surgery. So I'm skiing, we're cross-country skiing, we're biking, we're hiking, and I don't feel anything. I don't feel any strangeness whatsoever. And that's because I believe, I firmly believe, because of the diet and a lot of the movement that we see here. What are the programs that Mary and I do every week? We're here every week, probably more than Michelle wants us to.
Every year now.
We're here. So we're doing yoga on Monday. We're doing cardio bar, which is this very rigorous exercise program with Crystal Lee. She's just fantastic. The rock music. I used to play in rock band. When I retired in my early 60s, we formed a classic rock band, and we hit the road, and we were doing all kinds of rock concerts. So she puts rock music on, and we're there dancing to this rock music, which is really, really terrific.
Muscle strength class.
Muscle strength on Wednesday,
Excellent.
today. She was
Excellent. Tai Chi, movement.
Thursday.
Using your brain, because it's not just the physical body
Right.
that needs to be moving. Your brain has to also.
Right.
And then Friday, we absolutely love going to Zumba.
Gloria, Zumba.
Just dance, move,
If you-
airs if you can't keep up with me.
If you don't want to think you can do the mat yoga, you can do the chair yoga with Gloria. I mean, it's like movement is absolutely critical to your long-term health. It's not optional. You have no option. You're not walking, hiking. I'm actually taking up a little bit more than that, since I feel like I'm all back now. There's a process called rucking, where I put a backpack on, and I went over now. I did 10 pounds in the back of the backpack, and then we go for a hike. And then at the end of that night, I know I used all my muscle. I could feel it. I could feel my core, I could feel my back, I could feel my legs. But it's all good, because the next day I'm fine, and they've all recovered well. So and it helps your balance. Tai Chi helps in your balance. You're not going to be falling over as we age. So the bottom line in all this, and then I'll run the video that'll give you a little bit more insight into it. But the bottom line on this is I look at health span, our health span as a three-stooled object, okay? So I look here and I say, here's your genes again. Remember this epigenetics. So there's input and output. And you want to maximize this to be positive outputs, not negative outputs, right? So the first leg is, and we'll talk about that a little bit, and Mary can spend a little bit more time on it, is on nutrition. It's absolutely critical. In my opinion, this represents 70%, I'm going to say 70, maybe 60 to 70% of the effect on your health span, okay? So I'm going to say that that's 60%, just for, I'll make it lower than I actually think. Diet is absolutely critical, and it's eating good foods that are going to provide important nutrients for your body. The second leg, which I'll put in here, is exercise. So this is diet, okay? And then I'm going to say this is exercise. I think that's how you spell it, I'm not sure.
That's okay.
So I'm going to say that's 20%. All right, just give it 20%. So you got to be out there, you got to be moving all the time. It might be a little bit more than that. Probably should be a little bit more than that, but diet, exercise. And the third leg is important for everybody here and for what Michelle and her team does for all of us. Is, and for you, and you should be doing this for yourself, and you know that, it's community. Community. Right? We'll say that's 20%. Hopefully that adds up to 100%. So that this is also your family, it's also all of your friends. It's getting together, it's talking. All of these things input all kinds of factors into your genes and into your epigenetics to make you healthy. Now, if you do the opposite, if you don't have any community, you're isolated, you sit home all day on the couch and do nothing, and you're eating chips and Coca-Cola all day, it's going to be bad. Your output and your long-term health span will be negative. There's absolutely no doubt about it. So that's kind of the summary of what I've learned over the last 15 years of studying this thing. Let's listen a little bit to Michael Greger. Is there a button I need to push, Michelle? Let's listen to Michael. I've met him. Mary and I have had time with him. He is world famous. He's a bit on the high energy scale, just so you know.
He's very nerdy.
He's very nerdy, but he has a website called, and it's in your handout, nutritionfacts.org. So if you have a disease or an illness or something you're concerned about, he boils down all of the recent and past clinical trials. This is real science now. This is university. This is the NIH. This is the Food and Drug Administration. He boils down all of these nutritional clinical trials, placebo-controlled, double-blinded, controlled, that basically tell you for sure these things are real and they need to be taken care of. So push it.
On a personal note, this is a picture of me taken around the time that my grandmother was diagnosed with end-stage heart disease and sent home to die. She already had so many bypass surgeries, basically run out of plumbing, confined in a wheelchair, crushing chest pain. Her life was over at age 65. But then she heard about this guy, Nathan Pritikin, one of our early lifestyle medicine pioneers, and what happened next is actually detailed in Pritikin's biography. My grandma was one of the death's door people. Frances Greger, my grandmother, arrived in a wheelchair. Mrs. Greger had heart disease and claudication. Her condition so bad she could no longer walk without great pain in her chest and legs. Within 3 weeks, though, she was not only out of a wheelchair, she was walking 10 miles a day. Here's a picture of my grandma at her grandson's wedding 15 years after doctors abandoned her to die. She was given a medical death sentence at age 65, but thanks to a healthy diet, was able to enjoy another 31 years on this planet till age 96. To enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. That's why I went into medicine. Some years later, when Dr. Dean Ornish published his landmark lifestyle heart trial proving, with something called quantitative angiography, that indeed heart disease could be reversed, arteries opened up, well, without drugs, without surgery, just a plant-based diet and lifestyle program, I assumed this was going to be the game changer. I mean, my family had seen it with their own eyes, but here it was, in black and white, published in some of the most prestigious medical journals in the world, yet nothing happened. So, well, wait a second. If effectively the cure to our #1 killer could get lost down some rabbit hole and ignored, what else might there be in the medical literature that could help my patients, but just didn't have a corporate budget driving its promotion? Well, I made it my life's mission to find out. For those of you unfamiliar with my work, every year I read through every issue of every English language nutrition journal in the world. So busy folks like you don't have to. I've been compiling the most interesting, most groundbreaking, most practical findings from new videos and articles I upload every day to my nonprofit site, nutritionfacts.org. Everything on the website is free. There are no ads and no corporate sponsorships, strictly non-commercial, not selling anything. Just put it up as a public service, as a labor of love, as a tribute to my grandmother. New videos and articles every day on the latest in evidence-based nutrition. What a concept. So where did Pritikin get his evidence from? Well, a network of missionary hospitals set up throughout sub-Saharan Africa uncovered what may be one of the most important medical advances. According to one of our most preeminent medical figures of the last century, Dr. Dennis Burke, the fact that many of our major and commonest diseases were universally rare, like heart disease. In the African population of Uganda, for example, coronary artery disease was almost non-existent. So wait a second, our #1 killer, almost non-existent, what were they eating? Well, they're eating lots of vegetables and grains and greens, and their protein almost entirely from plant sources. And they had the cholesterol levels to prove it, very similar to what one sees in kind of modern day plant eater. You say, wait a second, maybe they were just all dying early, never lived long enough to get heart disease. No, here's age-matched heart attack rates in Uganda versus St. Louis. Out of 632 autopsies in Uganda, only 1 myocardial infarction. Out of 632 age and gender matched autopsies in Missouri, 136 myocardial infarctions, were about 100 times the rate of our leading killer. In fact, they were so blown away, went back, did another 800 autopsies in Uganda, still just that 1 small-healed infarct. It wasn't even the cause of death. Out of 1,427 patients, less than 1 in 1,000, whereas here, our disease is an epidemic. Atherosclerosis. Hardening the arteries is a disease that begins in childhood, by age 10. Nearly all kids raised on the Standard American diet already have what are called fatty streaks building up inside of their arteries, the first stage of the disease. These streaks then turn into plaques in our 20s, get worse in our 30s, and then can start killing us all. In our heart, it's called heart attack, and in our brain, the same disease can cause a stroke. So if there's anyone here today older than age 10, then the question isn't whether or not to eat healthy to prevent heart disease, it's whether you want to reverse the heart disease you likely already have, whether you know it or not. But is that even possible? You know, researchers took people with heart disease, put them on the kind of plant-based diet followed by populations that did not get epidemic heart disease or hope. You say, maybe we could slow the disease down a little bit, maybe even stop it. But instead, something miraculous happened. As soon as people stopped eating artery clogging diets, their bodies were able to start dissolving some of that plaque away, opening up arteries, without drugs, without surgery, suggesting their bodies wanted to be healthy all along. but was just never given a chance. That remarkable improvement in blood flow to the heart muscle itself was after just 3 weeks of plant-based nutrition. The human body is a self-healing machine, unless you're sticking with a fork 3 times a day. Now, sure, you can choose moderation and hit yourself with a smaller hammer. Well, why beat yourself up at all? This is nothing new. American Heart Journal, 1977, cases like Mr. FW here, heart disease so bad couldn't even make it to the mailbox. Started eating healthier. A few months later, he was climbing mountains, no pain. Right? Now, there are these fancy new classes of anti-angina drugs on the market now, cost thousands of dollars a year, but at the highest dose may be able to extend exercise duration as long as 33.5 seconds. It does not look like those choosing the drug route are going to be climbing mountains anytime soon. See, plant-based diets aren't just safer and cheaper, they can work better because you're treating the underlying cause of the disease. Now, normally I'd go on to cancer, talk about the other 15 leading causes of death, talk about the role diet may play in preventing, arresting, or reversing each of our top 15 killers, but what more do you need to know? There's only one diet ever been proven to reverse heart disease in the majority of patients, a plant-based diet. So, anytime someone tries to sell you on some new diet, do me a favor, ask one simple question. We say, has this diet been proven to reverse heart disease? You know, number one reason me and all my loved ones die. And the answer is no. I didn't consider it. If that's all a plant-based diet can do, reverse the number one killer of men and women, shouldn't that can be the default diet to prove another one? And the fact that it can also be useful in preventing, arresting, reversing other leading killers like type 2 diabetes and hypertension would seem to make the case for plant-based eating simply overwhelming. Most deaths in the United States are preventable and related to nutrition. According to the Global Burden of Disease Study, the largest study of human disease risk factors in history, funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the number one cause of death in these United States, it's our diet. The number one cause of disability in the United States, it's our diet. Now bumping tobacco smoking to number 2, cigarettes now only kill about 500,000 Americans every year, whereas our diet kills hundreds of thousands more. So if most deaths are preventable related to nutrition, then obviously nutrition is the number one thing taught in medical school. I mean, obviously it's the number one thing your doctor talks to you about at every single visit, right? So how could there be this disconnect between the science and the practice of medicine? Let's do a thought experiment. Imagine yourself a smoker back in the 1950s. Back in the 1950s, the average per capita cigarette consumption was 4,000 cigarettes a year, meaning the average person walking around smoked half pack a day on average. The media was telling people to smoke. Famous athletes agreed. Even Santa Claus wanted you to smoke. I mean, look, you want to keep fit and stay slim, just make sure to smoke. You need lots of hot dogs to stay trim and lots of sugar to stay slim and trim. A lot better than an apple there. I mean, sheesh, right?
Apples.
Though apples do connote goodness and freshness, reads one internal tobacco industry memo, which brings up many possibilities for a youth-oriented cigarette. They want to make apple-flavored cigarettes for kids. Shameless. Yeah. For digestion, say if you smoke. No curative powers claimed by Philip Morris, but hey, you better be safe than sorry and smoke. Blow in her face and she'll follow you anywhere.
Remember that? I did.
Every year,
You will find
We have to watch it.
We have to watch it.
a very special shape.
Oh, it's
Watch it.
Make these demands magical. The gold money.
No woman ever says no, there's a round so far back. After all, John Wayne smoked them until he got lung cancer and died. You know, back then, even the paleo folks were smoking. And so were the doctors. Now, this is not to say there wasn't controversy within the medical profession. Sure, you know, some doctors smoke camels, but others preferred Lucky. So there's a little disagreement there. The leader of the U.S. Senate agreed. Who would want to give their throat a vacation? Not a single case of throat irritation. How could there be when cigarettes are just as pure as the water you drink? Maybe up in Flint, Michigan. But don't worry, if you do get irritated, your doctor can just write you a prescription for cigarettes. This is the Journal of the American Medical Association. So when the AMA is saying smoking on balance is good for you, and the American Medical Association is saying that, where could you turn back then if you just wanted the facts? What's the new data advanced by science? Well, she was too tired for fun, and then she smoked a camel. Babe Ruth spoke of proof positive medical science, that is, when he still could speak before he died of throat cancer. You know, by some miracle back then, there was a smokingfacts.org website that could deliver the science directly, bypassing commercially profitable institutional filters. You would have become aware of studies like this. This is an Adventist study out of California, published in 1958, showing that non-smokers had at least 90% less lung cancer than smokers. But this wasn't the first. When famed surgeon Michael DeBaker was asked why studies back in the 30s linking lung cancer and smoking were simply ignored, he had to remind people what it was like back then. We were a smoking society. It was everywhere. It was in the movies, airplanes, medical meetings where one heavy haze of smoke. Smoking was, in a word, normal. Okay. So back to our thought experiment. If you're a smoker in the 50s in the know, what do? And with access to the science, realize the best available balance of evidence suggests your smoking habit not so good for you. So do you change? Or do you wait? If you wait until your doctor tells you between puffs to quit, you'd have cancer by then. If you wait until the powers that be officially recognize it, like the Surgeon General did in the subsequent decade, you'd be dead by then. It took more than 7,000 studies and the deaths of countless smokers before the first Surgeon General's report against smoking came out. You'd think maybe after the first 6,000 studies could give people a little heads up or something? Powerful industry. Maybe we should have stopped smoking after the 700th study like it. As a smoker in the 50s, on one hand, you had all of society, the government, the medical profession itself telling you to smoke. And on the other hand, all you had was the science. If you're even aware of studies like it. All right, well, let's fast forward 55 years. You know, there's a new Adventist study out of California warning Americans about something else that may be putting in their mouths. Of course, it's not just one study, put all the studies together. Mortality from all causes put together, many of our dreaded diseases significantly lower among those eating more plant-based diets. So, instead of someone going along with America's smoking habits in the 50s, imagine you or someone you know going along with America's eating habits today. What do you do? And with access to the science, you realize the best available balance of evidence suggests that eating habits are not so good for you. So do you change? Or do you wait? If you wait until your doctor tells you between bites to change, it can be too late. In fact, even after the Surgeon General's report came out, the American Medical Association went on record refusing to endorse it. Why? Could it have been because they were just handed a $10 million check from the tobacco industry? Maybe. So we know why the tobacco industry was sucking up, why the AMA was sucking up to the tobacco industry. We want to learn more individual doctors speaking up. There were a few gallant souls ahead of their time, speaking up against industries killing millions, but why not more? Maybe it's because the majority of physicians themselves smoke cigarettes. It's just like the majority of physicians today continue to eat foods that are contributing to our epidemics of dietary disease. What was the AMA's rallying cry back then? Everything in moderation. Extensive scientific studies have proven smoking in moderation, oh, that's fine. Sound familiar? The food industry used the same tobacco industry tactics, twisting the science, misinformation. The same scientists were hired, paid to downplay the risks of cigarettes and toxic chemicals, are the same paid for by the National Confectioners Association to downplay the risks of candy, and the same paid for by the meat industry to downplay the risks of meat. Whereas animal foods and processed foods, they've been killing off at least 14 million people every year. So those of us involved in this kind of evidence-based nutrition revolution, we're talking 14 million lives in the balance. Maybe, plant-based nutrition should be considered kind of the nutritional equivalent of quitting smoking. But how long do we have to wait before the CDC says, don't wait for open heart surgery, just start eating healthier as well? Until the system changes, we need to take personal responsibility for our own health, for our family's health. We can't wait until society catches up to the science again, because it's a matter of life and death. A few years ago, Dr. Kim Williams became president of the American College of Cardiology. He was asked in an interview why he himself follows the same diet he recommends to all his patients, a strictly plant-based diet. I don't mind dying, Dr. Williams replied. I just don't want it to be my own fault. Thank you.
So did you get the marketing point in this thing from the analogy between the smoking industry and all the papers that they present? They have them written for them to try to put disinformation out so no one changes. So how do you get started? It's a real simple one. It's just to increase the amount of what is another guy that I follow called Joel Furman. You might have seen him on PBS. He gives a lot of talks as well, similar to him. But he has an acronym that I think is appropriate. And if you just put more of this into your diet and less of all the other stuff in your diet, just shift a little, take one baby step. I was pretty adamant about all of this after studying the research, and I flipped the switch. I mean, I got off of an airplane. I read a book called China Study by T. Colin Campbell. He's professor emeritus at Cornell University. And I read his study of 6,000 people in China, where the Chinese government was saying, why are we getting these pockets of cancer in certain locations in China and not anywhere else? And they went there for years with blood samples, assayed what were they eating, how were they behaving, what was their lifestyle, blah, 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 and did an epidemiological study. It's the biggest in history of this. And the conclusion was that the ones that didn't were eating a plant-based diet. The ones that did get it were eating the American diet. They were introduced to McDonald's. They were introduced to more meat-based applications. They were getting the cancers and all the other stuff. So it was very clear. And I read that book. I got off of an airplane and I told Mary, click, we're going to go on a whole food plant-based diet from now on. And I did. We did. We did that as a team. So just how do you get started? This idea of G-bombs. It's in the handout. G-bombs. You have to try to figure this out. G, breathe. Feed. B is what? Feed. Beans.
O is onions,
Onions.
M is mushrooms,
Mushrooms.
another B is berries,
Beans. Yeah, very.
and S is for seeds.
Oh, yeah, seeds, nuts and seeds. So what Joel Furman said, he's also an MD and studies this whole nutritional biochemistry. He has an office in New Jersey, treats patients all the time, and he has, if you ever go to his website, you'll see case studies of people like you and me who come to him, he put them on certain regimes, and how they've prospered as a result of it. So my message to you, and then we'll open it up if anybody has any questions, and Mary can talk a little bit about what we eat, which is, we kind of work on this together. About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we go into dinner prep mode, and so we start working together, and then we'll make ourselves a good dinner. But she handles all of the breakfast stuff, which is just fantastic. But my message to you in terms of how to start is just, increase the amount of this stuff in your diet, and just decrease the amount of, for lack of anything, I'll just say meat in general, dairy,
And dairy and sugars and salt.
salt. Sugars to some extent, yeah. What else, Mary? I think
Well,
that's really,
they have it in your handout. Sugar, saturated fats,
anything with saturated fats in it.
animal products,
So you just-
processed foods.
But I'm not saying like flip a switch. I could flip a switch. I'm adamant about this. I flip a switch. I'm just suggesting, just increase the amount of this in your diet. Just decrease it more. Just continue doing what you're doing, because you're not going to change overnight, and you don't have the ability to change overnight. We did right away, and that's why I kind of survived that 10 years of having, 5 to 10 years of having shortness of breath, which actually was heart disease. Didn't know it at the time, but I had it all along. Finally, I had it diagnosed and checked out, and I went into the hospital, non-emergency, planned event, it was a planned surgery. I was in and out in 5 days, and I got to recover, and I'm back to the way I was before, without having a heart attack or any kind of chest pain whatsoever. So that's, my message is take it slow, just increase more of this and kind of less of that. And Mary, you want to say something about the food?
Okay, well, I picked just one particular thing, because I tried to think of what, we all have various different types of diets and stuff. So what do we all know about? Well, everybody knows about oats and oatmeal. So what I did was the health benefits of eating oats and oatmeal. And I'm just going to go through this briefly, and you're going to see how it touches upon all the different diseases and problems that you may have. Oats are incredibly nutritious, and they reduce the risk of heart disease. They also are rich in antioxidants, which lowers your blood pressure. They contain a powerful soluble fiber, which is good for a healthy gut. They can lower your cholesterol, and boy, can I prove it with my numbers. They also improve your blood sugar. So if you are diabetic, oats are very, very important. It's also very filling, therefore it's going to help you lose weight. Okay? And even ground oats, you probably have heard many health products that have oatmeal in it. It's very good for your skin. And to tell you the truth, I grind it and I use it in my pancakes. I use it in my waffle mixes. Okay? So what I did on this table is I took a bag of oats and I have in front of it fast ways to make yourself breakfast things. I don't know about you, but if it's not prepared, I'm not going to do it. Okay? So I took the time to make little packets of my own mixes, and then I write on what I did, okay? And so the next morning I just get up and make different things. The other thing was the steel cut oats. A lot of people aren't familiar with this, and the only reason I never bothered with it is that it took so long to cook. And so I found ways of, okay, you could make refrigerator oatmeal, why could you not make this the same way? Okay, so there are a lot of things I suggest you use the computer, Google things, look up, learn. It's all out there, so you can see what I do with that. I picked different seeds, which you can throw into everything. many of you may not be familiar with it. Flax seeds, chia seeds, hemp seeds. They all are very high in omegas, which are very hard to get. I only picked the one of walnuts because I love the thing about walnuts. Don't they look like little brains? Guess what? They're good for your brains.
They are,
They're good for your brains, okay? I picked wheat churn. There's so many good things in wheat churn. Just to kind of give you an idea how you can add things to stuff, I make my own granola. I always have, okay? But you make it once, it lasts for weeks, so I find that fun. I made refrigerator oatmeal. I do things like that. In place of milk, I always use whatever one is of your choice, but I just happened to pick this because I figured almond breeze. I love vanilla, so it's unsweetened. There's no sugar added to it. If you need added sweetener, use dates, people. And you can even get dates as a sugar, date sugar is out there if you wanted to use it. And you'll notice that I did Bob Mill, and I'm only gonna make this plug because I bet a lot of you don't know this. His bags are all recyclable. So you can put them into recycling, and I'm very much into recycling. So anything, what I think both John and I want to leave you with is that no matter what your age is, it's never too late to change the course of your health. Okay? So let's open it for questions.
you know, the last thing I'll say, and then we'll open it up if anybody has any questions, is in the handout, at the bottom, you saw nutritionfacts.org as a great source. This is Guy Greger. But there's also how to cook. And it is a hoot to watch these two gals cook. And they are the wife of Caldwell Esselstyn and the daughter of, Ann is the wife, and Jane is the daughter of Caldwell Esselstyn, who is the chief thoracic surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic. And he has written numerous books, written numerous papers on the effect of diet, like we just saw here, and diseases. He's even more strict than I am. But if you want to see how to cook, they are a hoot to watch. They're like 10 to 15 minutes long. And if you want to see how to cook in a really good way, that's the way to do it. The only other thing I would talk about, this was actually instrumental in my journey. I mentioned T. Colin Campbell and Caldwell Esselstyn, the guy I just talked about. They did a movie back, we met him, I've had dinner with T. Colin Campbell, not with Esselstyn yet, but T. Colin Campbell. And they did a DVD on, it's called Forks Over Knives. I'm sure it's on Netflix.
Think of the wording, forks. You're using
Forks.
a fork
Yeah,
rather
use
than
your
a
fork instead of using a knife to cut your chest open and have your.
Think
Anyway,
about
it's
it.
called Forks Over Knives. And if you watch this video and you don't get it after watching this, you'll never get it. This is probably one of the pivotal movies that I've seen when this first came out, and I had a chance to talk to them. So that's it. Are there any questions at all that anybody might have? I don't know. Obviously, you'll have it. Barbara will have it.
Just to your point about the medical profession, I was a nurse for over 50 years. Did you know that the doctors do not even take one course on nutrition? They don't, they do not even take one course on nutrition.
Yeah.
So we have to change it. We have to change it.
It is, that's true. And if you go into some of these guys' backgrounds, they said they've had maybe 4 hours
Yeah.
of nutrition science during their medical
During
training.
their medical career.
Yeah. So they go through all this stuff and no one talks to us. As he said, none of your doctors will talk to you about. They might say, well, they might now. They're beginning to change. I'm noticing a little bit of a change that they're becoming more aware of these effects. But again, from a marketing perspective, money rules the way the world rolls. And so you have to be wary. That's all I have to say. I'm very wary of what I'm told I should do. As I said, I will research it. I will find out. I never do what they say first. I say, give me the numbers, show me the studies. I'll go into the clinical trials of how Crestor was approved by the Food and Drug Administration. I'll do that because I like it. I'm a geek. I like to do that kind of stuff. So I'll go in and then I'll come back and I'll have the argument. I'll argue why I will or will not take it and what I think the issues are. Any other questions at all? Yeah.
The
So first of all, thank you. It's a good time
For you,
So you talked about the three legs of the stool:
Yeah.
nutrition,
Oh.
exercise, and
community.
community. So I feel that I get two of those legs done really well. A lot of exercise, and community is really good for sure. So just recently, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I got to do something about that. So are you saying that I could go on nutritionfacts.org and I could look up type 2 diabetes?
Yes, and boy, you'll have a,
And there's a lot of
there'll be
information.
10 videos, 5 to 6 minutes each, because what he does is he researches the actual clinical trials, all the work that's going on. He said, here's a food-based intervention that was studied in great depth, and up will come it. Now, he researches those, he puts it all together
To lay
in
in
something that any human being could understand. You didn't have to go in and understand what a placebo control.
Yes.
You could easily
Everybody.
understand, I know you can. But yeah, there'll be 10 or 15 references there on that. The book he recently published, he just published a book, and all of his book revenue gets donated to charity, just so you know. He's not selling anything. He writes books because he's got all of this information that he puts together. And his latest book is called How Not to Age. It has 13,000 references. So these are studies done at NIH, done at the FDA, done in European laboratories, doing, all over the world that detail the effect of diet and diseases and aging. And I wouldn't recommend you read it. I never read it. I can never read it from beginning to end. But if I want to know something about diabetes, he's got a whole chapter on diabetes. He's got a whole chapter on heart disease, a whole chapter on cancer, and the effects of that. It's somewhat technical, I have to admit. He goes into the pathways. He peels the onion way back. He'll go into the actual metabolic pathways as to what these things do in changing those epigenetic factors that we just talked about. He goes into greater detail, which I like. But I couldn't read it cover to cover. I couldn't do it. It's just way too much. But I like reading the introduction. I like reading, if I'm interested in heart disease, I'll read that, and then I'll read its conclusions at the very end. And then if I want anything in the middle, it's like having an academic Bible, which is good.
Can I put in one more plug about the research studies? I want everyone to know that when you hear on the television, coffee is good for you, or wine is good for you, or chocolate's good for you, you don't know who's doing those studies. Coca-Cola could be doing that study, or, the chocolate people do. These studies that John's talking about, those are the ones you want to look at, the ones that were unbiased, they're NIH studies, they're placebo controlled. That's when you can get your information. But don't listen to these things on the TV, because they're just trying to sell, soda or chocolate. Or,
Well, you saw it in the video. There was a company there called Exponent. I don't know if you saw that, but when they were doing the information on smoking, you saw these papers that were written. Well, who had the papers written?
Yeah.
The smoking companies did, and they had this company called Exponent write it, so that they try to switch and fix the information so that it makes them look better than they are. But it's these independent, placebo-controlled studies that are done usually by universities, usually by the NIH. I just looked up a whole bunch of stuff on statins because I wanted to research statins. And I could do 2 hours on statins, but I'm not going to do that. Back to you, Michelle.
John, thank you, John Mary, thank you so much for doing this. That was amazing. And if anybody is interested, our newsletter is out there. All of our classes are for free, currently still, write for grants for them. So please feel free to participate in them. You don't have to necessarily be in the best of shape. Everything is go at your own pace. And if you yourself have an inspirational story that you'd like to share with us, certainly we'd love to have you to do that. If you don't have internet access and you want to watch some of this stuff that John's been talking about, or you want to print out some of this information, let us know. We have the computers in there. You're more than welcome to use them. And if something needs to be printed out for you, let us know and we'll print it out for you. So those resources are there for you to use so you get healthy, just like you guys.
Thank you, Michelle. And share community.
That is
We
right,
have community.
that's right. Amen.
You actually excrete hormones when you're around other people, like-minded people, and interacting with other people. You actually help your epigenetics by being around people. So definitely come here, do that, move with all of the programs that she's put together. It's really marvelous. We do it every week, and it's not my only source. We do a lot of hiking, and I lift weights at home and stuff, but I do all of that stuff here almost every single day. So, anybody have any other?